fun.
I dig it.
I love that one. Yeah. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the June edition of Diablocritics.
Woohoo!
Yay!
Exactly.
You can hear the applause out there. Yes. So, yeah, it is Sunday, June the 16th. Happy Father's Day to all of you, you fathers out there. And welcome to the show. I am Kip Davis. I'm a specialist in the Dead Sea Scrolls and early Jewish literature, and I am joined, as always, by my good friends. Jennifer, tell us who you are.
Sure. I'm Jennifer Bird. I'm a PhD in New Testament, early Christianity. I'm public biblical scholar, I suppose. Yeah. My recent interest is in marriage in the Bible, both primary testaments of the Christian Bible. What does it actually say? What do people misunderstand about it? That kind of thing.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Who's next? Josh?
Joshua Bowen. I'm an Assyriologist with some focus on the Hebrew Bible. And yeah, I do a lot of like counter-apologetic stuff online.
Dan?
Notice I didn't say the word slavery in any of that.
You didn't. It's true.
Right.
Until you then qualified your introduction.
Exactly.
Thank you, Dan.
I just felt it was necessary. So.
Yeah.
And I'm Dan McClellan. I was going to say land shark because we were talking about deep cuts from SNL, but I position myself as a public scholar of the Bible and religion. My specialization is Hebrew Bible, cognitive linguistics, cognitive science of religion, conceptualization of deity, scripture, and religious identity. And yeah, that's
excellent. Me. Nice. So, I mean, there's a couple of new things going on here that people have noticed. There's some people who are missing. Our host, our producer, David McDonald, was unable to join us this morning because he has people sleeping in his studio. So decided, it's maybe not the best. As much as I tried to convince him, just
minor details.
Yeah, we want them there. We want them in the show. He thought maybe instead of waking people up at 4 a.m, with this was perhaps not the best choice for your guests. And also hard work has noticed. Yes, our friend Matthew Monger is not with us this morning. He has badly hurt his back. And he is out of commission for a while, so we miss Matt dearly today. And I hope at least he's able to check it out. Watch
as always,
right?
Bow tie.
So
Megan made this
the
one.
boy tie. Did she really?
Oh
wow!
I tied it, right? I tied them. She made it.
So just a liar. I don't believe it, man.
All right.
So
is that a red poppy on the material or no?
I think so.
Yeah, that's very nicely placed. Yeah,
all right,
well done.
It's all the way down there, so I can't see it.
The other face on the screen here is our friend Vishanti. Vishanti, welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. Trying not to be starstruck, so just pretend that I'm screaming internally, and I'm just here to make sure that it runs smoothly and you won't see me a whole lot unless they go off on too many tangents, in which case you'll see me get my chancla. So
we need someone to crack the whip, so Vishanti is here to help us out with that in David's absence,
or as we used to say in Uruguay, bajar la caña, si es necesario.
Yeah, see, I don't know what that means.
Este carnal, si me comprende.
Ojito.
He gets me, this guy. Yeah, so if you just hear like a ghost voice yelling, "Cállate," you'll know.
Excellent. Awesome. All right. Well, we've got a video to get into today, but I'll just go through. I'll just run through as a reminder for everyone how the show works. So the Diablocritics is a monthly show reviewing recent bad biblical on YouTube, and we've got a doozy for you today.
Mhm.
This is also a platform for us as scholars to briefly share information about our current and ongoing projects. We feature a live Q&A at the end of every show. If there are specific questions that you have for specific panelists, please include their name at the start. For example, if you have a question for Dr. Dan, please include Dr. Dan's name, or Dr. Josh, include his name, etc. And because of time constraints, we want to get through this inside of 2 hours. We can probably go a little bit over that if necessary. But because of time constraints, we will only answer questions that are submitted in the first 60 or 70 minutes. Questions will be prioritized if they are super chatted. So if you have questions and you want them answered, please be sure to get them in early and before the Q&A starts. All right. I think that's good. So, what are we doing today? We're watching we're watching this. Are you guys familiar with Gavin Ortlund?
Just a
Over
little
at,
bit, not yeah.
I've heard of him.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
You debated him or done things like that with him, Josh?
Right,
We
yeah.
discussed him.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Josh and I had a discussion with Gavin and his friend Trent Horn, all about Josh's favorite topic. But I think it went okay. It was a little frustrating at times, but Gavin runs this channel called Truth Unites. He's a very nice guy. I really like Gavin. He's a good guy to have conversations with. Unfortunately, he gets a lot of things wrong. He recently published a couple of videos. He's working through like what looks like a series right now of tough passages in the Bible. He did one on the Canaanite conquest narratives recently, and decided that Deuteronomy 21 was such a singularly upsetting text of the Bible that it deserved its very own video. So this came out I think just about a month ago. It was right around Mother's Day when this came out. It was right around the time that we did our biblical slavery discussion. So I thought it was important to go through this today. So Gavin's got a PhD from Fuller, which he earned in 2016 in historical theology, which will help explain a lot of the things that he has to say in this video. So he his dissertation was The Doctrine of Heaven in Anselm of Canterbury's Proslogion. He's also authored several books, many articles, and has been a pastor. Most recently, I believe, at the First Church of OJ. Is that really how it's pronounced? OJ in California.
Oh, hi.
That's pretty. Oh, is it Ojai?
Is it OJAI?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, that's Ojai.
Nice.
Eric, actually. So.
Yeah. Sweet. Yeah. So we pronounce it OJ in Canada. He's currently theologian in residence at Emmanuel Church in Nashville, and is basically committed his energies full time, as I understand it, pretty much to the YouTube channel and the ministry, Truth Unites. So yeah, you guys ready to get into this? See what he's got to say?
All right, let's see it.
Deep breath.
Here we go.
Did the ancient Israelites commit war rape? This is a concern that's raised against the Bible. Those of us who are followers of Christ will probably hear this at some point. This is one of the toughest passages in the Old Testament to try to defend. So I hope that this video will help people. I hope that it will serve people. And I hope that it will help oppose the terrible practice of sexual violence and mistreatment of women and children. This is actually something that's a huge problem in the world today as well, especially through the influence of pornography. And just the way things are going is not good right now.
That reaction, Dan. Yeah. That link he made. Yeah.
Right at the end there, eh?
Yeah.
So pornography bad.
I mean, just making that connection for this passage. Yeah, just
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And we'll get into it. We'll get into the passage a little bit. One of the things I like, I think it's important that Gavin recognizes the difficulty of some of these things, or at least provides lip service to this. He says this is one of the toughest passages in the Bible for Christians
to defend. Yeah.
to defend. There we go.
But I do want to quickly point out how much of a reaction that anyone on this panel would get if we started, let's say, a dating of the Book of Daniel video saying, I really hope this emboldens, or helps out the atheists to, hold up our atheism, or to disprove God, to make sure that we can put down the supernatural or something like that. Like the motivation being right out there in front, to really help people in their faith and to, defend the text, or defend, like our view of the text or something like that. You pointed this out, Kip, in your stream that you did on the Canaanite conquest. And I think it's an important thing, how much of a pushback we would get if we put our motivation, or if we, sorry, because I want that to not, if we made a statement like that was a motivation. Personally, I have no dog in the fight, although I am an atheist. Like, I'm not here to defend atheism or something.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, I just think that's what Bear's pointing out.
He does have a lot at stake.
By reading the passage, as I read it, you will understand why it's a difficult one. Many people call it the pretty woman text. Verse 10, when you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God gives them into your hand, and you take them captive, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire to take her to be your wife, and you bring her home to your house, she shall shave her head and pare her nails, and she shall take off the clothes in which she was captured, and shall remain in your house and lament her father and her mother for a full month. And after that you may go into her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. But if you no longer delight in her, you shall let her go where she wants. But you shall not sell her for money, nor shall you treat her as a slave, since you have humiliated her. What do we do with this one, right? Here's my thesis. This is not a timeless ideal, but in its historical context, it was a protest against abuse.
All right. We'll get into the passage here momentarily, but I think it's important to one of the things I really like about Gavin and his stuff too is he's really, really organized. He's very clear. He articulates his points well, and in this case, there's these two things, right, that he really wants to communicate. The idea that this is not an ideal, that this is, I guess, working towards something.
It was a step in a more positive direction, I think, is part of what he's getting at, right? Compared to other practices. Blah, blah,
The
blah.
incrementalism shuffle, basically.
Okay, that's a nice
perfect.
way.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah,
but
and then no, I was just gonna say then this idea that we should find something redeeming, in this passage as well, right? He calls it a protest
against abuse, right?
Against abuse.
I mean, I don't know. I'm like dying to jump in. So can I, I'm not sure with the protocol here. I'm like, okay, to say that this is about war rape is really is missing what you've just read. Like people, soldiers at the end of a battle raped the people that they had just conquered, male, female, or whatever. And so to say that this is about that practice or countering that practice is completely missing what the passage says. If at war you see someone you desire and you want her to be your woman, right? No husband and wife in the Hebrew, but like you want her to be yours, this is how you handle it. When you are abusing someone, that is not about desire. Rape is not about desire. Rape is about it's about power. It's about abuse. It's about flexing. And so when this whole thing is about not about the context of rape. This is about how it's appropriate in their world to take a foreign woman as your property. This isn't about, right? And so like out of the gate, I'm like, he is pissing me off because he doesn't understand what rape is.
Well said.
And something that we've discussed several times already on this channel is the fact that rape is this world, the concept of rape as we understand it is not really amenable to this world, because there was no there's not a word about consent
ever
never says ask her, because
even when it's your wife.
Because sex was not something that two mutual partners engaged in.
Exactly.
It was something that a sexual agent did to a sexual object.
Exactly.
And the agency, the will of the sexual object was just not relevant.
Exactly.
And so here it's just saying, if you as a sexual agent want to take this sexual object, here's kind of this idealized standard operating procedure, which, as we have also discussed many times, doesn't necessarily mean anyone ever knew about this, much less enforce this. This is propaganda that was written in a period when they weren't really going out to battle. These are exiled folks kind of fantasizing about when it's our turn again to do this. Here's how we are going to structure things, and look how progressive we're going to be. You know, we're going to say when you let your enslaved person go, you've got to give them money. Like, yeah, that'd be a cool thing to do. Maybe one day somebody will do that. Let's write it down. And
as Josh has pointed out, supernatural provisions, right? Like,
And I don't think this piece made it to the clip, so I'm just going to throw this out there, that he makes a comment about, oh no, maybe he does, but sorry, I'm just getting ahead of you. But it's like when he says, well, you know, they didn't, the Israelite soldiers didn't rape at the end of a battle. Like, you have absolutely no basis to say that. It's like saying, and he talks about what the biblical passages do say, and it's like saying that, forgive me, but I'm just going to be really honest.
All of them.
That's like saying that Christian men today don't abuse their spouses because it says to treat them well in the scriptures. But we know, in fact, it's more, they're more likely, because of all the oppression for everybody in these controlled relationships, that like that's a thing that happens a lot. So, you know, it's like a naivete too, that he means well. I do believe that, you know, but it just upsets me because he's saying such underinformed claims.
And I think one of the standard approaches of apologetics is to begin from the presupposition that this is all historical, authoritative, enforced, and none of that is supported by absolutely any data whatsoever. Like if you can't engage these texts as critical scholarship engages them, then the whole thing is a non-starter. If you demand that we accept that Deuteronomy is historical, was enforced, comes from the time period it claims to have come from, all of these things, before you can even engage the discussion, then you're not actually engaging the data, much less the debate. You're just kind of performing an argument for people who already agree with you and just want to be made to feel like there's a good case to make for their agreement. That it's just performative at that point.
Yep.
Let's read the Bible the way Jesus did. In Matthew 19:8, note the emboldened words here.
I'm sorry. Oh boy.
I'm gonna be real with y'all for a second. I haven't watched this yet. I've been busy. You said I hope y'all got to watch the clips, and I was like,
you reacted at all the best places. It's kind of fun that you didn't.
We just need a special Dan reaction.
This is not a timeless ideal, but in its historical context, it was a protest against abuse.
Right.
Let's read the Bible the way Jesus did. In Matthew 19:8, note the emboldened words here. This is something I've emphasized in other recent videos on slavery and the conquest of Canaan, that Jesus basically says, because of your hardness of heart, Moses allowed. So that word allowed is really important. This is a regulatory law. This is something that Moses is, according to the interpretation of Christ, allowing or permitting, and it has a specific occasion, namely because of your hardness of heart. And then Jesus says, but from the beginning it was not so. So Jesus is recognizing some laws in the Old Testament, they didn't reflect God's timeless ideal. They were not for all people at all times. On the contrary, they were a concession to human sin, trying to regulate human sin and hardness of heart at that time. But it's not God's creation ideal.
Okay, this every time this passage comes up, I get so annoyed because what they're doing is, yes, well, not even Jesus, the author of Matthew, is rationalizing a specific take on the grounds that, oh, Moses just let you get away with this because, God was unable to compel you or something like that. But even if we accept that reading of the laws about divorce, that the fact that Jesus does it for that one law does not give you license to just arbitrarily do it for any law that you decide must be the same exact circumstances. And you can't demonstrate that any of these other laws, whether it comes to slavery, whether it comes to sexual assault, whether it comes to war crimes, all this kind of stuff, there's no demonstration that Jesus thought that was the case for these also. It's just arbitrarily saying Jesus did it, therefore I can do it whenever I want to do it. And that's just a fallacy from the ground up.
Right. There's also, what is striking to me is one of the things I try really hard to impress upon people in chapter 3 of my most recent book on discussing Matthew 19. Thank you. 4 to 6 is that the very next verse that he didn't read makes it very clear how Jesus reads his scripture, which is he reads it through the lens of the male who possesses women, and women are possessions, women are sex objects, and you claim them by having sex. And that is why divorce is a problem, because you're both potentially going to go have sex with someone else. And so the focus of the whole concept of marriage, the thing we call marriage within both testaments, is focused on the sex act. And so Jesus is reading his own scriptures through the same possessiveness and dehumanization of women that the Hebrew Bible does. Like, he's still promoting this way of thinking about women. And that is a problem for me because people don't pay attention to the pieces of that and how that plays out and why that plays out today for people to focus on the sex act when we're talking about marriage, and why people care at all about the sex act and potentially whether it will be procreative, like all of those things. So anyway, it's this irony that he's saying we should read it the way Jesus does. I'm like, yeah, that's the problem, is we are reading it the way Jesus does. Okay.
If you look at the very last word of our segment in Deuteronomy 21, this is the verbal root anah, which I forget how it was translated in the translation he chose.
Probably humiliated.
Humiliated.
Yes.
Okay. So
But-
this verb is frequently used to refer to sexual assault. And the idea seems to be you have deflowered her.
Exactly.
You have rendered her damaged goods.
Right.
And this
Within
is
that
why,
statement.
right. And which is why in Deuteronomy, if you marry a woman and divorce her and she marries another man and then divorces him, you're not allowed to marry her again because she's been with another man. Therefore, she's not like eligible for you again. Yeah, and so the idea here is very clearly that this is a piece of property, and it's supposed to be in a certain state. And once somebody has had sex with that sexual object, that it has been used. It is no longer in new condition, and that, I think, is what anah is mostly getting at. You have I haven't come up with a good translation for this. Spoiled the goods. And it's not about rape necessarily as we understand it. It's just saying this is property. You've damaged the property.
That's right. And he misunderstands that because later, and I don't know if it's part of the clip, but he later talks about, like, you've humiliated her as if you've shamed her or embarrassed her. I'm like, no, you've done this thing that's off limits now. She's now tainted goods. Yeah.
And this is why in Deuteronomy 22, the very next chapter, you get all these laws about sexual assault. and it's basically about, hey, a man has a claim to her as property, and so if you have damaged the goods, spoiled the goods, then you have committed a crime against that man, whether it's the father who has a right to sell her for a bride price, or if it's her husband, and that's considered a far more sacred kind of property right than the father. Then it's, you know, the death penalty. But all these laws in the Hebrew Bible are all looking at this through that interpretive lens of a woman is a piece of sexual property. There's a dimension anyway in which a woman is a piece of sexual property, and her social value or her social standing is based on her either pristine vagina or her spoiled one. And so her relationship is all based on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, this actually came up before you continue, Vish. This actually came up in Josh's and my bi-weekly Hebrew reading stream this last week. I think it's important to point out here, Tomer, my friend from the land of Israel, notes here the root usually means to torture. Like in a modern context, this is a really problematic word just throughout the Bible, just because it's so enormously flexible. And it's I think in the standard lexicon, it actually is classified, the root is classified 4 different times.
Yes, I was actually looking at that.
Right?
Oh, isn't that
it can mean
interesting?
to sing, it can mean to answer, it can mean to
To live
exert
with.
yourself. It's like,
I love that. The torture and live with. There's a little bit of
right. It's just it's one of these things where, you know, we've got to be really careful in terms of how we're thinking about this. I wanted to say that much before we move forward, but we really do. I also really do want to get through some of the comparative stuff that he does here.
Yes.
In the ancient world, the rape of women and girls on the losing side of a military conflict was not only the standard practice, it was the celebrated standard practice. So you have artistic celebrations of sexual violence and exploitation of foreign nations placed upon coins, put on monuments, in other forms of art and commemoration. This was not only practiced pretty much ubiquitously, it was celebrated. People were proud. It was a way of saying, look what we were able to do to your women. In Deborah's song in Judges 5, you find this reference to the rape of Israelite women and girls by the king.
I think this is super important. This is a place where, Gavin, if you're watching, it would have been really, really good to put your sources up. Citing the Song of Deborah here is not going to work, right? So when you talk about how the surrounding cultures, even being more precise than that, say the Neo-Assyrians or the Neo-Babylonians or the Hittites, but I suspect there are probably a number of reasons why this didn't happen. But this is a place where it's very, very important to do that, because building your case, I think, requires that you make it. And you can't rely on Webb and West or, Paul Copan or anybody else, assuming that the audience is just going to go read their documentation. And to push back on this, because you weren't being specific, let me be specific. We have texts in Hittite that are specific, that say, on the return from a campaign, do not steal a woman or cattle or anything else. Do not abuse. Do not rape. The text is specific, right? In Anatolia, Liverani, Fuchs, any number of scholars, Holloway, Washington, for years, people have been pointing this out. The Assyrians, it's actually striking that they seem to go out of their way amidst all the what we would consider to be barbarism that we see on campaigns, decapitations, flayings, putting up on, and they're not shy about torturous things to do to women. Of course, neither is the Hebrew Bible, right? But one of the things that stands out is that there is no abuse of women in campaigns. There is no sexual violence to women in campaigns. And this is, I'll just read one quote here. This is Mario Liverani in his 2017. Finally, I would like to stress the fact that among the frequent and brutal Assyrian punishments, decapitation, impalement, the flaying of enemies, there is no appearance at all of the rape of enemy women, a tragically common occurrence from antiquity through the present. This is the result of an evident censorship that precludes any mention of sexual acts. Women were likely raped, as we've said here. This is me now talking, as we said, it was probably everywhere, right? When that, as Dan pointed out, didn't actually probably happen with ancient Israel because they weren't in a position to do something like that from a power structure, from a power standpoint. But it was not something to brag about, Liverani says. So pressing back specifically on that point. So anyway, that's it again in his volume, the Mesopotamian Civilization series. And I've got 10 more there that I could cite. But this is important because it's not enough to say other nations bad.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't do that.
No.
So would we say, and I'll shut up, but would we say that, my God, the Hittites in the middle of the second millennium, they're protesting against the abuse of women.
Right. Yeah.
The Neo-Assyrians, they're protesting against the abuse of women. No, right. We wouldn't say that. No. That would be a ridiculous claim to make. Right. And so my point is we need more. We need more, I think, to build this case.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
I also just want to throw out there that it's interesting to me that he doesn't at any point mention that men also raped other men. We're talking about war rape, rape as a, and like we have it engraved in rock, like of that scene of, final nail in the coffin kind of thing, raping the men you've just conquered. So it's interesting to me. And I think a part of the bigger picture for him, in terms of his own ideology and the things that are at stake here. But anyway.
And I think also in Numbers 31, we've got an example of harem where the only thing that we preserve from this is the unspoiled women. Yeah. So it's instructed that you are to do this. And Deuteronomy is coming in at another time period and saying, by the way, here are the steps for how you do this.
You were able to do to your women. In Deborah's song in Judges 5, you find this reference to the rape of Israelite women and girls by the Canaanites, and it's described as just, this is just part of enjoying the spoils of military victory. And in the phrase, a womb or two for every man, you could translate that even more crudely. Unfortunately, we have to kind of let the hammer fall of be a little bit shattered by the brutality of this and grieve it in order just to take it in and understand how dark human history is, unfortunately.
And it's not just human history. That's the piece that kept bugging me in this, right? I know.
You're talking about like ongoing human present, right? Like this is still
and throughout. Like it's not just
after the Geneva Conventions. This is still happening, right?
Right.
Yeah. Maybe.
And I don't think there's a qualitative difference between what Judges 5 is describing and what Numbers 31 is describing.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, it never says, this actually occurs on the battlefield before, the dust settles. It says they're just bringing back women, which is exactly what Numbers 35 has God saying, look, I told you to bring back all the women who have not lain with a man.
Okay, so here's how one text puts this. Speaking of Deuteronomy 21, and I've drawn a lot from this book for this video, Quote, if we are to understand these biblical texts, we need to be reading ancient war documents from Egypt, Assyria, Babylonia, and so on. Once people do this, they discover that the ancient treatment of women in war was utterly horrendous. In ancient siege warfare, the fate of female captives was considered so dreadful. If it looked like a city was about to fall, men at times killed their own wives. What an utterly ugly world. The treatment of humanity by humanity is sometimes staggering. Placing the biblical text within that sort of war context of the ancient world allows us to see Deuteronomy 21, 10-14 in a different light. Israelite war practices can only fairly be appraised in that historical context rather than comparing them to the modern world and so forth. In that context, the ancient Israelite practices were different. There's no glorification of sexual violence. On the contrary, there are these restrictions.
Can we pause it there for a second, Vish?
Away from those,
because this is something that apologists, when they approach this text, miss invariably every time. So he says there's no glorification of war, rape, or sexual violence or any kind in the Hebrew text, which is astonishing to me because, I mean, he's clearly not read something like Nahum chapter 3, right? Which I mean I could just read this for you now, and this is Yahweh, the God of Israel, speaking about his enemy, the city of Nineveh. Look here, I am against you, an oracle of Yahweh Tzbaoth. I will uncover, I'll lift your skirts over your head, or some translations. I think this is, I will uncover your genitals in front of your face.
Is that shul? Is that the Hebrew shul?
That's shul.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably.
I will show the nations your nakedness and the kingdoms your shame. I will throw feces on you. I will disfigure you and make you a spectacle. All who see you will recoil from you and say, Nineveh has been ravaged. One of the interesting things about this passage is actually in the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's a commentary on the book of Nahum. And in that commentary on the book of Nahum, there's a textual variant in there, which I think actually illustrates some of the discomfort the readers of this text had in, the 2nd, 1st century BCE. Instead of, I will uncover your genitals, the text there actually says, you will uncover your own genitals in your face, right? So don't give me this stuff about there not being any glorification of sexual violence in the Old Testament. It's there.
Was he saying that entirely, like the Old Testament in general?
I think so.
Within
like
the context
or even within the context of war, I think you have to look at texts like this and say, come on, like God's doing it. Right.
I'm not. Yeah.
We have there's a 2022 book, Sex, Violence, and Early Christian Texts, by edited by Christy Cobb and Eric Vanden Eykel. And I think that Stephen Young has a paper in there on sexual violence in Revelation 2, where God talks about taking the harlot, throwing her on a bed.
It's 17 and then 19, but yeah.
Well, it's Revelation 2:22, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
The throwing on the bed is in chapter 17. Anyway.
Well, it's also in the letter to one of the churches, Revelation 2:22. Behold, beware, I am throwing her on a bed, and those who commit adultery with her, I am throwing into great distress unless they repent of her doings, and I will strike her children dead.
Yeah, it's awful.
The God commits the exact same sexual violence that they're trying to insist is these texts are trying to move away from. But a point I want to raise that was kind of raised in the Liverani quote that you had, Josh, is that, and this is something that comes up when it comes to slavery. I responded to a video recently where someone says, "Oh, we think about American slavery, and they had no rules; you could do whatever you wanted." Yeah. And I raised the point that when we think of American slavery, we hear about historical accounts of what actually went on. And most of us are completely unaware of the laws that were on the books regarding how you were supposed to treat your slaves that were just ignored. But when it comes to the Bible, all we have is the laws that were on the books. We don't have any accounts of what actually happened. And so this is apples to oranges when we're trying to say, look at all the other historical accounts of Sennacherib explaining what he did to Lachish and all this kind of stuff. It's like, that's accounts of what actually happened, Deuteronomy is people fantasizing about how they're going to arrange the nation if they were in control. It's the laws on the books versus what actually happened. And we have one thing for the Bible, and we have a completely different thing when we look at the other nations. And they don't address this at all because they don't consider it.
I don't know how many of you guys, I know Josh has, but Jen or Dan, I don't know if either of you have had the misfortune of reading this book from which Gavin draws a lot from this.
I read like a chapter of it when it came to the incrementalism argument.
So at one point in the book, the authors actually make this statement. They say there's no glorification of brutality or sexual violence in any surviving Israelite artifacts or artwork. And I'm like,
how is that possible?
We don't have any surviving artwork.
Yeah, right.
Like there's nothing of anything, right? Like it's just there's nothing there.
Well, but this and this to me, it's gonna, and I think it's in this clip that you've got this statement where he says, like, we don't want to read it cynically.
Oh yeah,
right. And the problem, just like Dan is saying here, is that we do it for everything else, but we don't call it reading it cynically. So, like when we read the 𝀭border conflict, or we read about the law reforms of Urukagina in the Sumerian text, nobody has a problem saying, yeah, the king is saying things like, I'm releasing from debt all of the people that are being crushed, and I'm not delivering the weak to the strong. And boy, I'm such a great guy. Nobody has a problem going, wonder what's behind that. I wonder what's behind Sargon the First calling himself Sargon, which in Akkadian means the king is legitimate. Right. I wonder if there's something behind that. Now that's a cynical reading. No, the king was legitimate. Right? He's not a usurper. It's in his name. So like, but we don't have any problem doing that with these other propagandistic pieces.
Yeah.
When it comes to the Bible, if you try to question something that's behind it, it's like, that's a cynical reading. And I don't think it is cynical. It's a realistic critical reading. It's a historical critical reading. So I think there's a difference.
Pat brought up the comment about like this happens throughout history. We could look at the United States today and the laws that are on the books that are about social justice that are not being upheld. We could just like take your pick. Why do we have to make such a big deal about about these issues? Why do we have to actually fight for women to be able to like take out a loan for themselves? Like it wasn't until 1988 that a woman could get a business loan on her own. Like
that's insane.
Fuck off. Like that. Like equal rights. We made a law about that in the 60s, but like we're still struggling with it today. Like, no, come on. Let's just be honest that this is the thing. This is what happens.
Yeah, redlining has been illegal for a long time, and yet the biggest banks in the nation are being sued to this very day for redlining, and because it continues to happen.
It's not just a thing from the 60s. It was Anyway.
Wow.
Yes.
Violence. On the contrary, there are these restrictions that are designed to curb away from those kinds of abuses. There's absolutely no battlefield rape, for example, that which was extremely common in the ancient world. Now, some scholars dispute that, and they say, well, Deuteronomy forbids rape after the battle is over, but doesn't say anything about rape during the battle, so the Israelite soldiers were free to do that. This is one of those readings that's just overly cynical and just wrong. It's an argument from silence, and it runs contrary to the entire tenor of the Old Testament. This wouldn't make any sense to have this strict 30-day waiting period after the battle is over if the Israelite men had been free to pillage and rape and so forth during the war. No, during Israelite warfare,
I mean, the whole tenor of the Hebrew Bible is justice.
I'm sorry, y'all, the clips of your faces during that. Just the look of shock, horror, disbelief, incredulity is because that's the appropriate reaction. Just saying.
I just to be clear about what like these New Assyrian texts are describing and what scholars are arguing they're for. Like Harold Washington in his, I think it was his article on the topic. He's talking about mass deportation and like why the purpose of mass deportation. And one of the reasons that he argues that, again, scholars take seriously, there's a reason they take it seriously, is because it's meant to protect the property, the female property that's coming back, right? And if you're going to be utilizing this property that's coming back, you want to make sure that, as you guys have been talking about, it's not spoiled, right? And it's not a cynical reading of that when it talks about like, no, you're not allowed to, like, the soldiers are not free to just, rape whomever they like, right? They're not allowed to do that, right? That it's not like we wouldn't go to that, that Neo-Assyrian restriction and say, oh my gosh, like, they must have really thought highly of women. We wouldn't do that. And we wouldn't say that it runs counter to like the whole purpose of the law. Like, don't make sure that you have supervision over these soldiers as we're mass deporting these women back in a group, because we want to protect the women. That would be cynical to say anything otherwise. No, of course that's not the case. And I know that Gavin wouldn't say that would be true, right? Yeah. He would look at that and say, okay, but the difference is this is not a divinely inspired text that we're looking at. So it's okay to look for these underlying motives, right? That maybe aren't said out loud.
Right.
So I think that's important.
So, Dr. Josh, you're an expert on the Akkadian. I am not. However, one thing that I have, I think I'm right on, is we have Deuteronomy, we have Leviticus, we have Exodus. We have different law codes. They conflict with each other. Like, you don't get a single kind of consistent jurisprudence out of the Bible. They conflict with each other, but they're also law codes that are copying from other law codes that exist. The thing that we have with the other law codes, particularly in Akkadian, that we don't have with the Bible, is actual court cases and lawsuits and outcomes and things like that. And correct me if I'm wrong, not once in any court case does anyone ever cite a law code for their decision. And many of their decisions directly conflict with the law codes that existed at the time period. In other words, this is the equivalent of setting up the 10 Commandments outside of a courtroom and then using a jurisprudence that entirely ignores the 10 Commandments. And so when there's just no grounds on which to treat the laws in Deuteronomy as isometric with the behaviors in this time period, it's just so bafflingly fallacious, uninformed, and uncritical and presuppositional. There's just and they can never deal with these facts. That's all. That's how
The Ark of the Covenant, an object of extreme holiness that mediated God's presence, would be taken from the temple onto the battlefield. The understanding is the Lord is going with us into battle. Believe it or not, battle was considered an act of worship, a holy act unto the Lord. From that point, the Israelite men are in a sacral state. For example, they could eat the consecrated bread, normally given only to the priests, and they were forbidden from any kind of sexual activity. Any kind of sexual activity would require a kind of ritual cleansing, as you can see in Deuteronomy 23, for example. And the Israelite...
Can you stop it here for a second, Vishadi? Let's just knock this one out here for a minute. Deuteronomy 23. Like, importantly, that's a rule for what you do if you've, encountered any sorts of uncleanliness while you're it's to keep the camp pure, right? Like, this is the kind of stuff that the writers and the collectors of the Dead Sea Scrolls went crazy over. They obsessed over this type of stuff about maintaining purity within the camp. The law in Deuteronomy specifically says if you happen to have a sexual an emission
Wet
of semen
dream.
and
Yeah.
ejaculation,
Mhm.
you have to go and purify yourself outside the camp. Now, the importance is about keeping the camp pure. And I think I made this point, and I did another stream responding to this same topic earlier this year, and I think I made the point that, you know, nothing's there's nothing that's maybe as damaging to your ritual cleanliness as, you know, touching dead bodies, which is something that happens in war, in the battlefield, which is why it's really important to purify yourselves when you come back, when you re-enter the camp.
But I think that
looking...
meant, Kip, that it was illegal to touch dead bodies during war.
They just, you know, God just struck them dead, eh? I suppose. Is that what happened?
It's like a punting pole in Gilgamesh, right? You can put the punting pole in the water, but don't touch that water, right? So you can put the sword in, just make sure you don't touch the body once it's dead.
Or was it like professional wrestling with Wow.
Nice.
Smash. Oh.
Cleansing, as you can see in Deuteronomy 23, for example, and the Israelite practice of complete abstinence from all sexual activity during battle can be seen in David's comment in 1 Samuel 21, 4-5, where he's speaking to the priest Ahimelech, and he says, basically, women have been kept from us as always.
Listen, I love this passage because this is a story about David coming to Ahimelech, the priest at Shiloh, and lying to him, right? Like, the first thing Ahimelech asks David when David approaches him in the tabernacle is, you know, why are you here by yourself? Where are your men? What's going on? And he tells him, I'm on a secret mission from Saul, right? which is a lie. So David is telling lies to the priest, who then asks him, well, I guess I could give you these provisions from the temple, or sorry, from the tabernacle, which have been, you know, ritually prepared and set aside for the god. But you have to promise me that you've kept yourself ritually pure this whole time. And that's what David does. He says, honest engine, me and my men.
Promise.
I promise. We're yeah, as always, right? Or I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading this text too cynically.
Cynically, I think you are. You're cynical.
When he starts, it's hard though, Jen. When he starts with, you know, a lie.
Oh, come on. I have all kinds of thoughts running through my head about responding to this. Of course, all men abstain from jacking off during battle. Of course, they all do, right? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, maybe around the battle, but if you're doing it in the heat of the battle, maybe you've got your priorities a little mixed up.
But like the night before, the night after, or another day. I mean, come on.
All right.
David's comment in 1 Samuel 21, 4-5, where he's speaking to the priest Ahimelech, and he says, basically, women have been kept from us as always when I go on an expedition. You can also see this in Uriah's refusal to sleep with his own wife when David is trying to coerce him to do so on the grounds that he's in battle. And it's like he's saying, we're in the middle of a battle. How could I go and do that? So for the Israelites, sex and battle are completely separated from one another at God's command.
Can we just pause here? Thank you. I think that there's this notion that war rape means it has to happen actually on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Like with people groaning and in their death throes, and some guys like, well, shame to waste this semi-private ditch. And like war, that's not what it is. It also constitutes taking the goods back home. And now that, you know, I'm on leave, or now that, because we all heard about the stuff that went on during the war in Iraq with the raping and the of men of captive Iraqi soldiers and civilians that went on. That's war rape. That happened in the barracks. That happened outside of away from the battlefield. That's the same thing. So suggesting, oh, you know, they were pure when they went into battle does not in any way, shape, or form whatsoever preclude them from approving of the taking of women from the battlefield to stash away for later. That's still war rape. That's still,
and if you're really diligent about it, Dan, you know, there's procedures for purifying yourself outside the camp afterwards too. So
yeah,
you're good.
Yeah.
So.
And then after the battle, for other nations, you know, a lot of times what would happen is female prisoners of war would be made into temple slaves. Sexual exploitation would be an ongoing feature of their life. All of that is strictly prohibited in Israel. There's absolutely no temple prostitution. There's no ritual sex in the temple. Sex and worship are completely separated, just as battle and sex are completely separated. The alternative...
I'm so sorry.
Genesis 38, how did Judah know to... I mean, she was a temple prostitute, Tamar was, right? Like, that's what she was setting herself up to look like, and he partook, right? Sorry, am I misunderstanding the scriptures?
No, but I just presenting this as like, it's mixing these emic and etic categories over and over and over again. Yeah. And I'm like,
do we want to define emic and etic real quick?
Yeah. So like an emic category is one, like when they looked around and they said, like, we think that this is rape. We would look at that act and say that is rape. That is a category internal to them, right, in their culture. And that's what we've sort of been describing here. But when we look back at it from outside of their culture and we say that is rape, that's an etic category. That it's something that's not internal to them, right? So when we think about things like, you know, let's be very generous and say 50 years ago, even though it's happening right now, maybe it was much more pronounced 50 years ago. Was there a thing called marital rape? Right? No, it's your wife, right? And so, you know, guys were like, that, from their perspective, from that emic category internal to them, they're just having sex with their wife. That's not considered rape, even if she didn't want it, right? She signed up for it 10 years ago. So like, you know, but of course, from our perspective, looking back on that or across to that.
Exactly. It's still happening.
Yes, of course. It's clearly right because consent is required. Overwhelming, excited consent is required. But that's what I think is happening here. So when we bring in prostitution, temple prostitution, like this was some horrible thing that they were looking at and oh my gosh, like what? No. Right. There's a reason that prostitution is outlawed in the Hebrew Bible. And it's, Shamchat is not seen, I think, in the way that he maybe assumes inside of that culture that she was seen. Anyway, sorry, that was just...
And the whole temple prostitution category is also hotly debated these days.
Yeah.
A lot of scholars are moving away from the notion
sacred marriage, all that stuff.
So that's contested.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I think
much more nuanced.
In the year of our Lord 2024, I have seen people on Twitter say it's impossible to rape your wife.
Craziness. It's
a
terrifying world on Twitter. But I think we need to tackle the text here finally, Deuteronomy 21. And then we'll move on to some
Thank
questions.
You, Vishanti, for moving us
here. Yeah, doing a great,
the alternative
job.
for the Israelites is Deuteronomy 21. What I want to do here is go through the three features of this text. And I want to show that there's actually a redemptive element in each of them. First, the 30-day waiting period. Second, the removal of hair, cutting of nails, and changing of clothing. And third, the stipulations for divorce. First, the 30-day mourning. Only a month.
I mean, I'm so sorry, but like right off the bat, if we could just put those three back up there, So first off, the order of these is interesting to me, the way that this is set up. But setting that aside, like concerning divorce, yeah, like, and we talked about this, I think, in our stream, Kip, on the Hebrew stream that we did. But like, there's gradations here, yeah. And I mean, obviously, Dr. Bird can talk about this at length. I will probably have to like, but at any rate, like it's not this you're unmarried or you're married, right? Like there are gradations here, and it's not just unmarried, concubinage, married, right? There are levels of married, and you can see this in like some of these things that are being called out. Why are we saying you can't sell her? Right? That, like, if this is a stipulation that's defining normal marriage from their perspective, from their MA category, there would be no reason to call out, just like in the Exodus 21:7-11, there's no reason to call out you can't sell her to a foreign people, right? Because this stipulation it's been addressed by the right itself. It's so like there's so much more nuance and gradation here that I think is just sort of being glossed over when we when we just use the word divorce in and of itself, because if like, I think the criticism goes both ways here is the point that I'm making. Sorry.
First, the 30-day mourning, only a month. You've just ripped this person out of their community, and now they only get 1 month to grieve. Another concern is more at the scholarly level. They read it cynically, and they say the purpose isn't really to allow her to mourn. The purpose is to make sure that she's not already pregnant before you marry her. I don't think that's right. And a lot of people actually in the scholarship as well push back against that. First of all, just the explicit
who are a lot of people,
right? In verse 13,
that's what I want to know.
Allow for more.
There's another 1 month mourning period. I'm curious if Jephthah's allowance of his daughter to have 1 month to mourn her virginity is considered a redemptive feature of his sacrifice of her. Like, the hell difference does it make if this is put off for a month? It doesn't make a difference. She is still going to be subjected to sexual abuse against her agency. So yeah, just like Jephthah's daughter was sacrificed after she was allowed to go hang out in the woods for a month.
I will, if you want me to read something by from Washington's article here. Nowhere else in the biblical law is a specific period of mourning stipulated for an occasion of bereavement. A variety of traditional mourning periods, ranging from 3 to 7 days after death to the first anniversary of death, is attested in narrative and prophetic texts, and he cites Morgenstern's Ritual of Birth, etc. The usual period of mourning would appear to be 7 days, and he cites a number of passages. Only twice is a 30-day period, and I think Gavin calls this one out. Only twice is a 30-day mourning period attested when all Israel mourns the deaths of Aaron and Moses. In these cases, however, the period is denoted by the number of days, in contrast to the present text, which says a full month. So,
yeah. So move forward.
First of all, just the explicit statement of the verse in verse 13 is to allow for mourning. But beyond that, a time frame of 1 month doesn't really fit with other purposes that are commonly put forward, like making sure that this woman is not already pregnant. That's not enough time. Give the text the benefit of the doubt. If it's saying it's for that, it's for mourning. Now someone's going to say, only
Can
a
I
month?
just, I'm so sorry to keep stopping, but I mean, like, this to me is, again, it's like approaching other passages in Deuteronomy and saying, well, if the woman cries out, then it wasn't rape. But if she doesn't cry out, if she does cry out, it was rape. If she doesn't cry out, it wasn't rape. Right. And looking at that from like a, trying to assume something about the text,
giving it the benefit of the doubt.
But here, like, well, we know scientifically right, or biologically, that it might not show up quite that easily. So within the 30 days, so we know that it's not enough time. That's giving a lot of credit to the men back then.
I'll
right?
say.
Giving
Right.
a lot of credit to them.
Yeah.
And like, we shouldn't be giving credit to them for the, well, I mean, she didn't cry out. You know. She
But I
probably
think
wasn't raped then. Like,
it just
we don't want to be assigning this sort of specialized thinking when it comes to women in these contexts.
But this is really maybe this is one of the best expressions I've seen from a Christian apologist on the difference between reading these texts as a critical scholar who's interested in knowing what they're actually about and where they actually came from, and someone who's just determined to give the text the benefit of the doubt. Like the fact that there is a month period of mourning set aside here for unspoken reasons prompts us to go, what the hell is going on? Like, why is this the case? And it requires this sort of an examination and interrogation of the text to formulate reasons for this. Maybe I'll just take the time here to read something from Rory Cox about this particular passage, where he says that the month-long period of mourning was a matter of ritual purification. Rather than expressing humanitarian concerns, the restrictions detailed in Deuteronomy 21 may have originated as a form of taboo, during which time the foreign captive was purified. The woman had to discard her captive garb, alter her physical appearance in order to be safely integrated into the Israelite religious community. In other words, the taboo period was not designed with the mental or physical well-being of the captive in mind. Rather, the taboo period fulfilled a socio-religious function rooted in a concern for the purity and the homogeneity of the community. Over and over, these texts, the more we read them carefully and critically, the more we discover that that's really the primary concern here, right? There's not such a central concern on the individual, whoever you may be. This is all about maintaining the community, and I think this fits in to that, right?
This is something in cognitive science of religion and ritual theory. There are a lot of things that activities, behaviors that are inherited over the course of generations that are referred to as causally opaque. We do them, but there's not really a clear relationship between cause and effect. Why do we do them? Well, we do them because we do them. And they get rationalized, though. Like, baptism. Well, what's baptism? Oh, it's a rebirth. Oh, we're doing this. Oh, we're doing that because of this, that, and the other thing. And these are just ad hoc rationalizations that people come up with to endow this behavior with some kind of significance, some kind of meaning, so that people can think they're doing something productive. And reality, they're identity markers. They're usually things that you do to show you belong to the group. And yeah, it makes perfect sense that this is something that originated in a specific socially contingent kind of where this is a liminal space we're giving them to transition from another society into our society. And then later on, Deuteronomy was like, oh, it's for mourning. Yeah, let's just remember, this is them fantasizing about their ideally structured community. And so they're like, oh, we do that thing over here. We'll just say it's for mourning. And once again, the person is just taking the text at its word, and then additionally shellacking as thick a layer of the benefit of the doubt as they can on top, to the degree that they overrule the text and say, no, we're imposing doubt so that we can impose the benefit of the doubt so that we can make this a lot more amenable to contemporary sensibilities. It's doing the exact same thing. It's saying, oh, that thing they did back then, that's actually because of this. When Deuteronomy was saying that thing back then, it's actually because of this.
I mean, like the text says that David actually really was a good guy, and he wasn't even around when Nabal was killed. So we know that it's true.
And
I'm
his
on a
name
secret
is-
mission from Saul.
David's
Yeah.
the man after God's heart afterward, and you know.
And
I
Abigail was
don't
like,
question that.
I really like the cut of his jib. I think I want to marry him.
Right.
Don't read
No.
it so cynically.
My husband, whose
Even-
name was Idiot, he was God killed him.
I mean, even Moses wrote that Moses is the most humble man on earth, guys. Come on.
Touche.
Touche. So, all right. Shall we get through the other 2
Yeah, let's
points?
try it. Let's
Only
see.
a month? You know, that's way too short. Her husband might have just been killed and she only has a month to grieve. But in the ancient world, a week was more of a common, culturally accepted grieving time. You know, again, in that historical context, it's not the way it sometimes can seem to us in our historical context. Actually, there is a recognition of a relative.
I'm so sorry. Did he just cite Job? Is the rationalization here that Job is not Israelite, and so this is statement about the wider ancient Near
No,
East, and
he's
that's what the
saying-
7 days?
No, he's saying that like 7 days is more normal for mourning, and so, gosh, this is actually a gift we're giving that you're being told to give to the woman.
right.
Oh, so
You got a
this
whole
wasn't a
month.
statement about the rest of the ancient Near East. That
I
they
mean,
get
I think
7
he was
days
just
for
saying in
mourning.
general.
I
Like,
think he was saying the convention is
yeah,
a week.
shorter than
I think
that.
so.
Yeah.
So
In
this
the
is-
Hebrew Bible or outside the
I
Hebrew
think
Bible?
it kind of implied both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. As long as
Yeah.
that was the case.
Yeah.
As long as
No,
that
I
was
think
the
he's
case.
implying both. That this is actually an extension of what would be typical.
Gotcha. Okay. Very good.
So
Very good.
great.
Thank you.
It's
Again,
extra
in that
redemptive
historical
before you rape
context,
her.
it's
Yeah.
not the way it sometimes can seem to us in our historical context. Actually, there is a recognition of a relative to that time, longer period of time allowed for mourning.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Okay, but what about the shaving of head, paring of nails, removal
Yes,
of
what about
clothes?
this?
Someone might initially look at this and just think, how degrading. This is horrible. You're taking away her dignity. You're taking away her beauty. You're taking away her culture and so forth. At that time in history, those actions served 2 purposes. One is a mourning ritual, and the other is cultural assimilation. Just like the month-long time of grieving is a way of acknowledging the real grief she's enduring, so this is a process of kind of ritualized grief and transition and assimilation into a new community.
You
Just
did
think
that
how
yourself,
opposite
though.
this is of celebratory rape.
You
Because the-
didn't you weren't like, oh, my mom died. Somebody come over here and forcibly shave my head for me. It was
This
Like,
is
this is
not
stuff-
the
yeah.
flex that he thinks
think-
it is. I know
Yeah.
I say that all the time.
Mourn!
But I mean, like,
Mourn!
but I mean, even if like this is a type of genocide. Like, get rid of that
Yes.
culture.
Yeah, the assimilation.
Yeah.
We don't
having a
want
piece-
anything from your former culture
Right.
come into ours, right?
That's
Get
right.
rid of it. This is not a good thing.
Right.
This is not a good thing.
And this is I just thought of this something in when it comes to personhood, the hair and the nails are things that are kind of they are removable features of personhood, but they're still considered to possess the agency, the identity of the person. And so this is really divesting them of their identity.
Yeah.
And so it's
Interesting.
a process of removing their identity so that a new identity grows back. I haven't thought about that, but that
True.
just
Wow.
reminded me. Hair and fingernails and toenails are 2 things that constantly come up as kind of the detritus of personhood that can still be endowed and viewed with personhood.
Thus, the saving of some of Muhammad's peace be upon him. Right. Nails and hair and stuff that became. Well,
Interesting.
I'm just trying to
Yeah.
be respectful.
It's good.
I've seen it.
To a new community. Just think how opposite this is of celebratory rape, which was the common practice of the day. This is an ancient way of trying to push against that and allow for a process of entrance into a new community. In that time, to be without a family and potentially without a community, you may have had very low chances of survival.
So can we pause again? Because he
Okay,
refers to this forcibly divesting you of your identity so that you can be forcibly inculcated into a new identity, so you can be forcibly taken as a legitimate wife, is now giving you away to come into this. It's flipping it on its head for no other reason that what is bad needs to be presented as good. So we're just going to assert that this is a kindness rather than a forced conversion and a forced dehumanization and repersonification
Yep.
as part of our property now.
Just out of curiosity, how are you guys feeling right now? Like, is all this talk about rape like just undoing you in your gut the way it is me, or is it just me? It's hard. This is hard.
It is
Not
hard.
just you.
Very.
This is hard to sit here and have this conversation extended, right?
Yeah.
And the more I
Mhm.
mull over what he's saying and not saying, and I keep going back to that thing at the beginning where he hopes talking about this, Deuteronomy 21, is going to help address the abuse of women and children today. I'm like, dude, take the whole fucking Bible through that lens. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I keep cursing today. I'm really, this stuff gets me really angry.
It's the haircut. It's
It
the
is the
new
haircut.
edgy haircut. It just,
Which looks nice.
you know,
But you know what I mean? Like,
He's trying to
really?
rehabilitate rape,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
infuriating. That
It
is
is.
infuriating.
It is infuriating.
Yeah,
And there are so many passages in the Hebrew Bible or Newer Testament that encourage men to be violent towards women, right? I mean,
Right.
there are
Yeah.
so many. We could spend a long time listing them, right? And so
And this is just saying, here's the appropriate way to
to
sexually
justify
violate
a
a woman.
horrific passage.
Yeah.
So something he said at the end there, which I think also deserves some attention. He makes the point that this is beneficial for the woman because the alternative is just to be left behind and
Right.
in this world of chaos where she'll probably not survive. And I think apologists who make this argument haven't thought this through because they're not taking everyone home with them.
Right. Exactly.
Right? Like there's still people that they are leaving behind.
That's right.
You
And
know,
by the way, women can be quite, resourceful and find
Sure they
ways to survive
Yeah,
on their
yeah.
own.
At least I didn't kill her. Doesn't make it a good thing.
You can't look the text itself, right? The text itself tells you that it's a good thing for her from their vantage
it
point.
does. Yes.
Right? If she no longer pleases you, you have
Yeah.
to let her go by herself, right? So what? The text is Gavin going to argue that the text is saying you have to punish her if she's displeasing? Is that because if you're letting her go by herself and going off by herself is a bad thing, so you have to make sure she's incorporated into your house. This must be a punishment on her, so she better not mess up or she's going to get punished by being sent away to herself.
Yeah.
Well, in the next chapter, as well as in Exodus 22, the man who rapes the woman who is not engaged or married, he's never allowed to divorce her because sending her off on her own into Israelite society as damaged goods is a punishment, is something that it would basically set her adrift with no legitimacy.
Should we do that last point of his? And then because he's got this one more, right?
Let's see if we can actually get through a video.
I think we've got.
Okay,
we can
thirdly
do
and
it. We've
finally,
got
what
a
about the
minute?
stipulations concerning divorce? Again, in that historical context, you can actually see pushing against the powerful party and in favor of the vulnerable party in this prohibition. It's saying if the marriage does not continue and it ends in divorce, this is a prohibition against treating her as a slave. On the contrary, she is a free woman, an Israelite. She has all full rights, full status of a free Israelite woman. The rationale for that is since you have humiliated her, or some translations say since you have dishonored her. This is placing the responsibility and blame on the party with power and reflecting a concern for the dignity and the status of this woman. And in the ancient world, that is remarkable. Chris Wright says the law
remarkable.
in the midst of
Okay, can I? Because right here it sounds like this passage is riffing on the female debt slave passages in Exodus 21, where it says if a man sells his daughter into slavery, she doesn't go free after 6 years like the men. She stays with you forever. If she doesn't please you, or it says it prohibits selling her to a non-Israelite in Exodus 21. But a man who buys a female Israelite debt slave, basically as a sex slave, can sell her to other Israelites. And that is presented, and the apologists for slavery will present that as somehow merciful, but
because we're keeping her in the kin.
Yeah, but here it's here you're not supposed to treat her mercifully like a slave. You're supposed to treat her even more mercifully. But if it's a woman you've raped who is an Israelite, that would be unmerciful. You can't divorce her because you got to treat her more mercifully. Like when you set up these different expectations against each other, they can't all be merciful. Some of these are treating women horrifically, but they all have to be rationalized as merciful.
It's like the 3 year, 6 year like thing, right?
Yes.
If you have, I guarantee you, if the Hebrew Bible said, if you take a slave, you can only keep him for 1 year and you have to release him in the second year, they would be all over it all day long. Look how great it is. You can only keep him for 1 year.
That's so much better than the Akkadian laws.
So much better. But since laws of Hammurabi say you can only keep him for 3 years instead of for 6, or you can only keep him for 3 years, release him in the 4th. Maybe there's maybe God needs that extra time. I mean,
you can find a way to justify anything.
Just make it work however you want.
Yeah. So
hey, you're not allowed to kill a slave, or no, what is it? You're not allowed to beat your slave. None of the other laws have laws against beating
like
slaves, except for the ones that do. But
and I would like to. I'm so sorry. I would like to, when we're done with this, could we go back and just play the last 5 seconds? Because I want to make sure that I heard him correctly about the law protecting the vulnerable party and this being unique. Because I just want to make sure that I heard him, because I'm not sure that I did. So, but go ahead, Kip. Sorry.
Sorry, my son is just handing me a Father's Day present. So it's very. Oh, thanks, buddy. Do you want to say hi to the nice people?
There's a lot of people in here. Oh my goodness.
I know. Thanks. All right. See you in a bit. Sorry. We're watching the last 5 seconds of this bit here. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is placing the responsibility and blame on the party with power and reflecting a concern for the dignity and the status of this woman. And in the ancient world, that is remarkable. Chris Wright says,
what is the remarkable part of that?
Right.
Is it right? That there's a concern for a woman who is vulnerable in a situation of power imbalance with a man? Is that what's supposed to be remarkable?
I think
any difference is going to be represented as remarkable.
Well, that's utter nonsense.
It is, right?
Yeah, you cannot treat her as a slave since you have dishonored her.
I'm curious about that word too. Like treat her
as
a slave.
Oh, treat her as a slave?
That's the humiliated or dishonored.
Right,
or
exactly.
Yeah.
It's another word, amar.
Enslave her. You can enslave her, isn't it?
No, it's an entirely different verb that I
have. Hitamer. Yeah, I think it probably means to trade with her, like to utilize her in a transaction.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's the hitpile of Amar. Yeah,
but this, I mean, this just these people don't read the text carefully, right? They don't read it well. He says, he reads this passage and then says, well, look, she's like a free Israelite woman with all the rights
who is
and
ineligible for marriage
afforded to her. But it's not, right? Like it is literally casting a woman adrift. Like,
but if you're not satisfied with her, you shall let her go free, and certainly not sell her for money. You must not treat her as a slave. I'm reading the NRSV updated. You must not treat her as a slave since you have dishonored her, since you've spoiled the goods.
Yeah, see, this is how I read this text, is you can't sell her because in so doing, you'd be defrauding another party.
Yeah, you violated her virginity. So you can't engage in trade because she's damaged goods.
Right.
Not goods, as another
right. So, so have we...
But just to be clear, I just want to make sure, if the point here was that the law in the Hebrew Bible is taking the side of the vulnerable woman over the side of the powerful man, and that is somehow unique.
That's what he's saying.
Right.
That's just to tell me you've never read the ancient Near Eastern law collections without telling me you haven't read the ancient. I mean, like I can point you to a dozen right off the top of my head, law, it would take me a second to think through them, but like laws about how if a slave, for example, is beaten by a free man in the laws of Vornama, the free man is given 120 lashes, 60 with one type of a whip and 60 with another, right? Or if a female slave, if a master has sex with his female slave and she bears a son, she's going to be freed, right? And the son has the option, if the father declares him so, to become a legitimate heir. But in either case, even if he doesn't, she's to be freed, right? And this is true in the laws of Vornama for a different reason. But I mean, like,
yeah,
like this is what laws do: is they look who's the vulnerable party from their perspective, and we're going to take that vulnerable person, because the law doesn't have to intervene for the powerful person.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
So, I'm sure Gavin's historical theology work is great, but
Really?
dude, I don't know. I honestly don't.
That's a silly thing to say, Kip. I know that you're trying to be
Perhaps,
respectful. I think you're trying
yeah.
to be kind and respectful, but I would be careful with those kinds of things.
Okay.
Historical theological work is going to be the same thing that we've just been experiencing, isn't it?
Fair enough.
Why would it be any different? He has things to prove and to justify and to make, white men look good and feel okay about themselves at the end of the day.
And that is a world that is remarkable. Chris Wright says, the law, in the midst of the nastiness of war, is trying to privilege the needs of the vulnerable, a woman, a foreigner, a captive, over the customary rights of the powerful, a man, a soldier, a victor, a husband.
I mean, I could just, I'm half tempted to do it, but I mean, I could just pull up, like any of the prologues of the A&E law collections.
Yeah.
Like just read through the laws of Hammurabi, read through again the reforms of Urukagina. These are royal inscriptions, right? And what they're doing is they're saying, I changed things, because before me, man, the people that were in power, they oppressed the people that were vulnerable, and I stepped in and I changed that stuff. Right, so justice reigns in my land.
Yeah,
I didn't hand over the weak to the powerful, or the orphan to the wealthy, or whatever. Like, I took a stand against those things. Like, are we going to treat that law collection with the same what is, I've blanked on the term, like the giving it the benefit of the doubt?
We're
going to do that?
Charity.
Yeah,
Hammurabi does
charity?
the same thing. I provided for the poor and the widow and the orphan. It's like, there's like one law about the widow and in all of the laws of Hammurabi, and it's not very favorable toward.
You know what, Dan? That's a cynical reading. Okay, I think Hammurabi was.
I'm a cynical.
I think he was really into.
Just give Hammurabi the benefit of the doubt. I mean,
but
if he said it, he did it, right?
Here's another point. If we're kind of trying to privilege the what was Wright's quote, something to the vulnerable, privilege the right to the vulnerable, something like that.
Yeah.
So what this law does is basically say we can't stop men from raping the women that they find on the battlefield, but we're at least going to delay it for a month, which says it's not a full privileging, but it's like we're going to do a little bit. And this
but just the pretty ones, Dan.
Yeah, just the pretty ones. The rest, they get slaughtered. But and the idea here is that, look, God can't make them change. Men are going to rape women. God can't be expected to stop them from doing that.
Right.
I mean, look what they were wearing.
Bible, yeah, the Hebrew Bible is full of examples of God saying, "Hey, do this thing. Oh, you're not going to do it. Death to you." Killing firstborn children because Pharaoh didn't want to let people go. But it's too much to ask men not to rape women. So we're just going to say, wait for 30 days before you rape them. The notion that God is incapable of compelling these people to change their ways, and so is just kind of incrementally moving them along so that 2,000 years down the road, entirely different people can finally maybe be told not to rape women, is asinine. Like, it is pathetic. The attempt to try to argue that this is some consistent representation of a deity who's holding them by the hand and bringing them along the way is one of the dumbest arguments I have heard. And I have heard a lot of dumb arguments. Like, you really, really, really have to be committed to that conclusion to be like, I can accept that. That's just, there's nothing. There's no other way to put that. That just utterly
and again,
asinine.
If we're holding to this comparison in Matthew 19, then I think what we'd end up having to say is, yeah, you can marry female captives, right? You just have to do it right, because divorce is not done away with in Matthew 19, right? You just got to do it right. There are only certain places that you can do it. And so that's what he's saying. Yeah, sure, you can take a female captive and you can marry her and you don't have to get her, but you just have to do it correctly, right? Slavery's okay, right? It's only in certain contexts that you can do it. You got to do it right. The institution
God continues to allow you to rape women because of the hardness of your hearts, but
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate one more time, because I feel like it needs to be said again, that the mindset behind all of these texts, whether we're talking about the laws in Deuteronomy or we're talking about the way Jesus is portrayed, the things attributed to Jesus in the Gospels, they're all about the same kind of mentality and mindset and worldview that keeps women as property of men. And that even the conversation about in which case divorce is allowed, and again, that's only started by a male in that context, like all of that language, all of the things that are being fought over here in this conversation, like it's all about men in control, men with power, men possessing women in lots of different ways, with lots of different labels and concessions to yada yada. But Jesus himself, and this is the thing, and I knew why we didn't do this, but in that clip, he goes on to talk about John chapter 7, verse 53 to 8:11. And it is one of my favorite stories to challenge someone like him on, because of the way he reads it, which is a very typical way. And so, even Jesus himself is time and again canonized as saying and doing things that are still not great for women. And they're not as great even at the time as people like to make it sound like he was this progressive feminist or whatever. Like even the thing about catching a woman in adultery, like there's so many pieces, right? I won't get into it here, but
Jill Hicks Keaton's book, Good Book, has a wonderful discussion about the woman taken in adultery and these other passages as well, about how they're deeply problematic.
Lost my train of thought there.
I'm sorry.
So it's to me, he's undermining, he's being just duplicitous in these other ways, that he says that the message of the Bible is about love and acceptance, and that's just bullshit. And he talks about, all the different things that he's doing, these like sappy, lovely little bow ties around things. And it makes me angry. It makes me very angry, because there are so many people who are going to watch him who have already watched that and are eating it up. And they're being, like taught to think this way. And the scriptures themselves come out of a patriarchal worldview. They establish and perpetuate this same kind of patriarchal worldview, viewing women as property from cover to cover, right? As Dan pointed out to us, it's not lacking revelation, and we got, like it's cover to cover. And it makes me so angry that a man who means so well, as Gavin does, gets away with making it sound prettier than it is, and isn't actually holding himself accountable to what is actually being said, and to what even Jesus is saying and perpetuating in the way he handles the conversation that we call marriage and divorce in this case. It just makes me so livid. I'm just, I'm kind of shaking thinking about it, and sick to my stomach, because I've heard the word rape so many times in the last hour and a half,
Yeah, I'm feeling really uncomfortable and tense from all that. Just the audacity of a guy like Gavin, who wants to justify this simply because he's already predetermined that his book is univocal and it has to be good and perfect and holy and better than everything else, and also belonging to a class of people that do not systematically and on a large scale experience this kind of assault. Like, men are men are assaulted regularly. But socially, it's considered like less important for whatever bizarre reason. It's gross. Like it's just bad no matter what. But just having a guy defend.
Happy Father's Day, guys.
So much about him. Yeah, happy Father's Day. I choose the
if
bear.
he was a
Let's
former
do
pastor,
super
like,
chats.
you raise a really important point, Shanti. Like, if he was formerly a pastor, like, how many people in his congregation were dealing with abuse, some form of physical, sexual abuse, in their intimate relationships, and weren't able to talk about it because of the naivete and denial going on here.
Right.
Yeah. Selah.
That is
Let's do some
sobering.
super chats.
Let's do that.
All right. Hard work, $4.99. Started your new course. I'm assuming he's talking about Kip.
Josh has a new course too. So maybe it's Josh's course.
Doesn't Dan have a summer thing going on? Or no, is that somebody else?
No, it's going to be later in the didascally thing. We're actually shutting that down. But I'm going to be teaching biblical Hebrew in the fall.
Nice.
So, but Josh, your Hebrew class started up?
Yeah, they just did their midterm.
Oh,
tell us about the Hebrew class, Vish.
What do you want to know?
The professor's a real dick.
The corniest mnemonics imaginable, but it's doing the job.
That's all that matters.
That's what.
Yep.
That's what Rahab sang on the way home. Choma on the range.
Yeah. So Josh, for people who don't know, I'll just say this. So Josh has a course on a new course on MVP. Course is about I think it's about creation myths, right?
It's about intertextuality and myths.
Okay.
In the Hebrew Bible, right, from the ancient
Near East. So, and the difference between Josh's course and my course is that if you buy Josh's course, you will probably finish it.
I'm dead. I'm dead.
Okay, next one.
All right. Snufflety Wuggins for $5. Thank you guys for the work you do. Christian nationalism is so effing scary to me. You guys help me sleep at night. Agreed.
Well, thanks for the kind words.
I know. It's a big deal.
It is.
By the way, I'm really enjoying this book, which is related.
Good.
Yeah, it's a great discussion. Some good data in there.
Awesome.
Masturbator for $5. Please discuss the evangelical.
Oh, I just got that. Okay.
Justify financial support for far right parties. It's real. I don't know if this is really the platform for that, but
perhaps
do you want to tackle this, or is this for a completely different stream? Talking about politics for somebody else's country.
We should probably log it away.
Yeah.
But I think it's an important thing. Yeah.
It's outside the parameters of this particular discussion, I think. All right, JC for $5. I'm not going to try to pronounce that. Somebody probably knows Greek.
Placed on Jesus, intended to parallel the acanthus crown on the Corinthian capitals.
I think we should be having Kip pronounce everything moving forward.
No.
Given the OJ. No, just kidding.
Yeah. No. I cannot. I literally hurt myself laughing at that. Like, it's not.
Sorry, Kip,
I'm not sure what the crown of Acanthe placed on Jesus. I'm not sure of the specific thing they're referring to. Is this a statue, or is this is anyone else?
This is
Stephanos ex Acanthon would be crown of thorns. So I think this is just a transliterated title for crown of thorns.
It's used in the Gospels. Okay. I don't know about that.
JC, $2. Is the Chapel of the Derision a reference to this?
Oh dear, I don't know what this is.
Is this from a long time ago? I don't know the context.
I've heard it both ways.
I don't know.
The Chapel of Derision in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. I've been there. I have seen that. I did not know its name. In the chapel is preserved a fragment of the column on which, according to tradition, Christ sat down with his thorn of crowns.
So that's with reference to the last super chat, then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
It's not a super chat, but happy birthday, Milwaukee. Yes.
Happy birthday, Lawrence.
Any thanks, Josh.
I used to be able to do backflips, by the way.
Nice.
but I'm 50 plus now.
I see $10. Someone in Ugaritic. Feel free to read that part.
Yeah, I mean, pronouncing Ugaritic is complicated in and of itself.
Yeah.
To reconstruct the vowels, but
It's derived from Sumerian Hersag, which is a homograph of Azubir, the etymon of saffron in a abortifacient. Are Zahav and Zahav from Azubir. Okay, that's interesting. Zahav and Zahav. Interesting.
Yeah, these are probably very complicated questions.
These are a lot.
So 🀭 like means mountain, and yeah.
I have a comparative lexicon of Ugaritic and Canaanite, though I'm not sure that the 𝀭is derived from Hersag.
Yeah, I would expect a G, not an N, even though I know it's a nasalized. 𝀭is a nasalized G. I suspect it would come over as a G, but I'd have to spend time with all of that.
Constellation Pegasus for 1999. Just saw something interesting. The country adopted British common laws. Women were the property of the father, handed over to the husband. Reminds me, I think they meant of Exodus 21. Got some property rights of the woman versus the fetus.
That is one of the things that I think is missed in Exodus 21 is if people want to focus so much on what we would see as like the positive sides of 20 to 21, 26 to 27, but people skip right on over 22 to 25 and 28 to 32, right? Because if the majority of scholars are correct in the way that they read the somewhat difficult, just from an internal Hebrew perspective, versus 22 to 25, if it's consistent with what we see in the rest of the ancient Near Eastern law collections, the fetus is not considered a full human, right? And is causing its premature death results in a monetary payment. But
by the way, not a standardized payment either. A slave has a standardized socially determined value. The fetus does not have a standardized socially determined value. The husband determines what the penalty will be, and then there are arbitrators there to ensure it's not exorbitant. So it's even more property and less person than an enslaved person.
But just as Dan pointed out, clearly in 32, this is just straight property law, right? Kill a slave with an ox, 30 shekels, move on with your life, right?
Yep.
The Free Thinker for $9.99. Would Gavin say that God could have been incrementally okay with some abortion in the past and just a little less now? He wouldn't accept incrementalism on topics that don't make the Bible look bad.
And this is a perfect place. Thank you very much, Tyler. To bring up Middle Assyrian Laws A53. I know it was all on the tip of everyone's tongue. Middle Assyrian Laws A53. But I mean, like,
right here,
you've got one law in the ancient Near Eastern law collections that outlaws aborting a fetus, and the Middle Assyrians got it. So, like, again, from their perspective, from their lights in the evangelical Christian community, they theoretically, if they're staying consistent, would have to argue that the Middle Assyrians were very progressive on abortion.
Maybe the most progressive, given the amount of political weight that's afforded to this specific question, right? By evangelicals, it's the purity test, right?
I think the Middle Assyrian laws are also the only laws where the price of a male slave and a female slave is identical. Is that accurate?
I'd have to look.
I know that usually the prices are different. There's one law code where they're identical, and I think it's the Middle Assyrian laws. It's been almost 20 years since I've read that part.
That's pretty good if you remember that then.
Nitty for $4.99. Also, the purpose of the Uriah text is completely different. Gavin is in the Bible Olympics performing hermeneutical long jumps. Give him a medal.
Yes, that's true.
Hang Fashi for $20. The full scale of the horror within Numbers 31 is something apologists Shrug off. How do they understand how the warriors determined which girls were virgins to keep for themselves? Slay the rest. The inference should be horrific.
Yeah.
There's a litmus test. They just dipped them in this special water, and they determined.
Based on the fact that it says they are there to mourn their mother and father, it's probably if you find a girl in a household with adult, a man and a woman who are adults, then she still lives with them. She's not married to another guy.
Yeah,
so
has never had sex. Yeah, she lives at home.
One of the things that's missed in that story in Numbers chapter 31 is that after everybody gets their allotted plunder, right, from everything that came back, they have to deliver a levy to Yahweh. So Yahweh gets his cows, Yahweh gets his sheep, Yahweh gets his virgins. What do you think he's doing with those?
JC for $2. Is it possible they used saffron as birth control?
Sounds similar to the question about whatever, the etymological question. Well, we do know that people have always known about abortifacients. So whatever, like there are various things over the centuries, but it was some of the earliest writings, very early writings talking about how to properly terminate an unwanted pregnancy. I don't know about saffron specifically. I just know that it's been written about.
I'm pretty sure that Chicago Syrian Dictionary, UW, has a listed reference to the first tampon. So,
wild.
Yeah.
Wow.
I have to go check that. But I mean, that makes them pretty progressive, right? Scientifically. So
Steve's the mother of invention.
It's resourceful.
All right. Delta Juliet for $2. Videos on undesigned coincidences. Nonsense. Lol.
I assume the answer is yes here, right? If I understand the question correctly.
I understand the question.
Yeah. That might have had better context at the time.
Maybe.
Right.
$5. Can we really say that he has good intentions considering he's defending and dishonestly at that? How much worse does he have to be before we condemn? Really on that one. Smitty. As Dr. Bird, I'm much less inclined to be kind and giving people the benefit of the doubt when they're apologists defending slavery and rape. So,
yeah.
Mark Rothenbuehler for $10. Would it be selfish of me to wonder what Dr. Josh's Kent impression would think of biblical war brides?
Yeah, so I think that Mark, he's probably one of these perverts sitting out there thinking about those 14-foot whale penises. Okay, so I'm here to help, but I want to make sure that you atheists know that you're going to get whacked. Okay, so. That's what we do down here. Come on down Dinosaur Adventureland, $39.95. We'll give you a good deal. Okay, I get one of my video series collections on creation. There are 17 types of evolution and the evolution of your car. Okay, so I'm here to help.
Can't tell that hand healing from the snake bite.
Oh yes,
That's
you
right.
guys heard about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
That Ken Hovind got bit by a rattlesnake.
Oh, really?
Dan doesn't know the story.
A snake handler.
Yeah. So
meeting?
okay. So Kent isn't part of one of the snake handling denominations.
Yeah,
but,
I didn't think he was.
Apparently, one of their snakes escaped from the Dinosaur Adventureland reptile house, and he went looking for it. Mistook a snake that was definitely not that. Picked it up, and it bit him twice on the hand. And he proceeded to take like a not a bolt stunner, but like a taser, and electrocute himself in the hand twice to try to neutralize the poison. Unsurprisingly, that was not effective, and he had to go to the hospital.
Well, I am sorry to hear about that injury and his escalation of his injury. But good grief.
His explanation was that the taser wasn't strong enough, which is why it didn't work.
It sure does sound like
just zap venom into neutrality or something.
That's one of the things that he
that's
has
his thinking.
Taught. Yeah.
Oh, he actually has a
he
background.
has
in it.
actually, yes, he's had seminars where he's talked about this. But I gotta say, like, it sure does seem like there's something going on at Dinosaur Adventureland. Like,
All I
it
can
just doesn't
picture
seem like
is
there's
him
ever a
him
dull
lying
moment,
in
right?
that bed. All I could picture is him lying in that bed and telling that Chuck Norris joke, right? Like, yeah, and after 3 days of agonizing pain, the snake died. Okay.
Speaking of, Dr. Josh, please explain the Sumerian dog joke.
Sumerian dog joke. I've got a T-shirt. Shoot, I'm trying to remember what the joke was. I'll have to get back to you guys. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head. There's a...
Okay.
By the way, I looked in Del Malete and some for Harshan, divine mountain dwelling of the god El. It says it's cognate with Akkadian Harshanu, but then it says RSAKK dot. Is that like Sumerian something? That's not an abbreviation I recognize. But it says CF, and then you've got a D, and then HUR.SAG. So I think that's probably from Sumerian, isn't it?
Or song.
I'm
just
having
says
a tough time following.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's it seems like there could be some kind of etymological connection, but it's through Sumerian rather than Akkadian, but I don't know the significance of all that. Sorry, just wanted to try to follow up on that question.
Jolly Roger's been looking forward to this stream since the last one. They say that I swear you guys could do a 12-hour stream and I'd be here for it all as long as I wasn't working.
Well, I swear we couldn't do a 12-hour stream. So
I'm about to tap out.
But we certainly appreciate the love, the love from everyone who came out to hang out with us today.
Yes,
came out to hang out with. Yeah, that was right. So before we go, maybe if we could each just go around and say something about what we've got going on, academically or even just online, what's happening. Maybe I'll start and then we can just go counterclockwise. I mean, I've got a couple things that I have to write, some articles for some dictionary entries on. I think it's the new release of the Oxford Encyclopedia of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is pretty exciting.
Cool.
Yeah. Which is being updated for the first time after 25 years, which is great.
Oh, wow.
But they asked me to write about forgeries. That's the thing that I get asked to write about all the time now. But there's a couple of other ones too. The book is, I think, almost 2/3 of the way done now, and upcoming this week, I'm pretty excited about this. This week, I'm going to be doing a split stream with Neil Sandleck, the Gnostic informant, about the origins of the Torah, and my hope is that we can maybe provide some much needed nuance, I think, to this question. Oh dear. Well, I continue to hope. So so we'll see what happens. That's happening on Wednesday.
Yeah. Okay.
No, that's good. Okay. Who's next? Dan.
You know, it was originally written in Greek. So
I've heard this. Yeah.
I am about to turn in the first, hopefully last round of edits on my trade volume, which hopefully we'll have a cover and pre-orders available around my birthday or maybe a little after next month. But it'll be called The Bible Says So, where I just every chapter is the Bible says slavery is bad. And then
that's the actual title. Do we have an actual title now?
Yeah, the Bible says so. Still waiting on finalization of the subtitle, which is a
Let's see
bigger
it.
deal than I thought it was going to be. So I'm very excited about that. I'm going to be intolerable once I have a cover. So beware. I am writing the Oxford Research Encyclopedia of Religions article on monotheism, which I'm also very excited about, particularly because they said, here's access to all of our stuff. So for the next few months, I have access to all their online stuff. That's very exciting. And I've got to revise the paper I presented at our conference at Brown University on monotheism back in May for publication next year. And as usual, I'm doing a weekly podcast. The Data Over Dogma podcast is available every Monday. I'm excited about that. I'm on social media every day. And I'm going to try to do more Spanish content because I realize I'm getting incredibly rusty. And so I need to get back in practice. So I'm doing that. And yeah. And I'm going to teach biblical Hebrew in the fall. Hopefully I'll be able to announce that and have registration available within the next few weeks.
Awesome.
¿Quiere practicar juntos?
Me encantaría practicar juntos porque no hay nadie en mi casa que habla español.
All right, that's enough, you two.
Right.
Igualmente.
So very quickly, I'm writing my commentary on the book of Leviticus. I think this is my 4th or 5th pass through. And I'm at the stage where I'm actually doing the actual commentary step. So text criticism is essentially done. A lot of the anyway, so that's nice and fun. And of course, we just finished our midterm on the biblical Hebrew class. So 5 more weeks to go, and then we'll probably take like a month break and then start Hebrew Grammar 2. So that should be good. Yeah.
What textbook are you using?
John Leong Sales.
Oh, Sales. Okay. Very cool.
Oh,
Bye.
there it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
With my crappy non-blue screen.
Yes.
Taking
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's all
it's a
we
lot.
Yeah. Well, hi. I am really excited about this week's live stream. I have Jennifer Glancy coming on actually to talk about slavery in early
I'm
Christianity.
gonna have to watch.
Yeah,
Nice.
New Testament, early Christianity. And last week's live stream conversation was with Jay Marshall, at Ball State University. He's a good friend and colleague. And we had a really, really good time talking about querying Paul's letters. Very fun conversation. And I enjoyed just that, and also got me excited about writing my next book on Paul, which is still a few months off because I'm still working on the audio for my book, Marriage in the Bible, What Do the Texts Say? Still working on recording and editing that. And then also I have a video series that I'm going to work on next. So, but talking to Marshall about that was really kind of very exciting and invigorating. This is the 3rd Thursday. This week has the 3rd Thursday of the month. So I have a live conversation Thursday at 8 p.m. for anyone who's supporting me through Patreon. I'm also trying to keep putting out there 2 to 3 videos a week from former live conversations or story time, doing that. So I'm trying to be on social media every week, but not necessarily every day. But I am trying to do those kinds of things. So, and currently we're still working on getting some traction with, or something, getting out there in the world, the letter that we wrote about IVF and this kind of correcting the science on that, as well as responding to the cherry picking, biblically speaking, as well as church history, theological doctrine speaking. So I actually just did a live stream right before the Diablocritics today to read through the letter for people who want to know what it says, but don't really think about going to look at it themselves, or it's easier to just listen to it. So I read through the letter. I also read through all the names. There are 100 names with their institutions, so that took a while. So reading this as fast as I could. Anyway, so we're still trying to just spread the word about that, because there are so many different things happening politically around this personhood language. There's still a need for kind of talking points. So anyway, lots of ways you can. I have lots of videos, like either just talking about the link to it on the website at wildoliveBibleandCulture.org on the read tab there on our website. So is where you get the link to the IBF letter. So that's what's going on in my world.
Awesome. Sweet.
We ended
Well, guys,
exactly at
1 o'clock. Look at that. We did it. We got through a whole video. We got through all the super chats. Thank you so much, Vishanti, for stepping in and helping us out. Guys, Vishanti has her own channel and she has her own Patreon. So
I mean, yes, but I haven't really put out official things yet.
it's coming.
I didn't.
Coming.
I know it is. It is coming. I've got everything set up. I just need to like hit publish. So it's coming. Just
All right.
slowly.
Awesome. Well, I think we're gonna go. See y'all in a month. Happy Father's Day, and thanks for hanging out. Take care.